We probably use thousands of words a day, and most of them just fly by without a second thought. But what if a word, one so simple, so common, we don't even see it, was actually a key? A key to unlocking some huge spiritual reality? Well, today we're going to crack open one of the shortest words in the dictionary to find out. So, seems like a pretty simple question, right? How much can you really pack into just two letters? But according to a deep dive into historical theology, well, the answer for one little word is pretty much everything. It's a linguistic puzzle that actually forces us to look way closer at the very language we use to talk about our own existence. And that word? It's in. Yep, just IN. But the source text we're exploring uses this tiny preposition as a master key to unlock all these different layers of meaning about the Holy Spirit's relationship with us. It's really less of a word and more of an invitation to go deeper. Okay, so here's our game plan for this explainer. First, we'll look at the hidden power packed into those two little letters. Then, we're going to explore 5 really cool analogies for what it means to be in the Spirit. After that, we'll flip the whole idea on its head and see the Spirit as a place. Then we'll make one super important distinction before we tie it all together where it counts, in the act of worship. So the source text we're looking at points out something really interesting, that even the shortest and simplest words can have an incredible number of different meanings. The whole argument here is that every single definition of the word in can actually deepen how we understand the Spirit. It's like a linguistic key to a whole spiritual reality. Okay, so how on earth are we supposed to wrap our heads around this? Well, the author gives us 5 powerful analogies, 5 different ways of thinking about what in means to help us get a handle on how the Spirit can actually be inside a person. So let's walk through them one by one. All right, first up, the first comparison is to this old philosophical idea of form and matter. Just imagine a sculptor. They've got a lump of clay, right? That clay is the matter, but it's the sculptor's idea, the form, that turns it into a statue. And here's where it gets really powerful. So we're the raw material. And just like form gives shape and definition to that clay, this source argues that the Spirit gives spiritual form to us. It perfects and completes our excellence, literally shaping us into a new kind of spiritual being. Okay, analogy number 2. This one compares the Spirit's work to our own power of sight. I mean, sight is an amazing power, but it's not like it just works no matter what. It totally depends on the condition of the eye itself. And it's such a perfect illustration, isn't it? Sight only works in a healthy, clear eye. Well, in the same way, the source suggests the Spirit's power is only really effective in a purified soul, a soul that's clear and ready to receive it. The potential is always there, but, our own condition is what makes it possible. All right, let's keep building this idea with analogy number 3, thinking about the skill or the art that lives inside an artist. A master painter has their skill all the time, right? Even when they're sleeping or not even holding a brush. The really key thing here is the difference between being there and doing something. An artist's skill is always present, but it only becomes active when they start to paint. Well, it's the same idea with the Spirit. The text says it's ever present with those who are worthy, but its power, like for healings or prophecies, only works when it's needed. Number 4 is something we can all, for sure, relate to. Health. Health is definitely something that is in our bodies, but as we all know too well, it's not always a permanent, guaranteed thing. And this one really highlights how fragile this connection can be. Just like our health can change or even be lost, the source argues the Spirit does not abide with people who can just easily reject that grace. The text even brings up the biblical story of Saul, saying he lost his connection because of the instability of his will. Okay, for our last analogy, we're going to turn inward. The source compares the Spirit to something we all use every single second, our own faculty of reason. I mean, stop and think for a second. How do your thoughts actually work? This is such a cool parallel when you think about it. Our own reason works in 2 different modes. It's the silent, internal thought just inside our heads, but it's also the external, spoken words we use. The source says the Holy Spirit works in a really similar way, bearing witness internally with our spirit, but also speaking externally for us. Okay, hold on. We just spent all this time exploring 5 ways the Spirit can be in us. But now, the text does something I did not see coming. It completely flips the whole thing on its head. It stops asking what's in us, and it starts asking, where are we? I mean, just listen to this quote from the source. This is a pretty wild idea. The Spirit isn't just an influence or a power. It can be thought of as a location, a place where people are made holy. And we're not talking about geography here. This is all about spiritual reality. So, what does that even mean, a spiritual place? It's the end result of all those analogies we just went through. The shaping, the seeing, the health. The text says it's the right place for contemplation. And, this is the important part, for true worship. It's the state you have to be in to have a real connection with God. And that brings us to one last, really critical distinction the author wants us to get. There's a big difference between how the Spirit relates to us and how the Spirit relates to the Father and the Son. And it all comes down to the prepositions in and with. They are not the same thing. And you can see the huge difference right here. For us believers, in describes a kind of operational grace, a gift that's given out in parts and, as we saw with the health analogy, can come and go. But for the Father and Son, the word is with. And that signifies something totally different, an eternal, inseparable fellowship. It's not a gift, it's just who they are together. So, where does this all lead? We've talked about analogies, the Spirit as a place, the difference between in and with. How does it all come together? Well, it all culminates in the act of worship. It all comes down to this famous quote from the Gospel of John. In spirit and in truth is the destination of this whole journey. Real worship isn't about being in a certain building, it's about being in the right spiritual place, which is the Spirit itself. And that's the final piece of the puzzle, really. According to our source text, when you worship in the Spirit, it's like looking through a special lens that reveals the true divinity of the Son. The relationship is so tight, so inseparable, that to really know one is to be brought into the presence of the others. So that leaves us with a pretty big question to think about. If the Spirit is not just some force, but is actually a place, a realm for true worship, what does it take to get there? What does it actually mean to be fully present, not just in your body, but in your soul, in that very place? That's a thought to really sit with.